All right, Sidney, thank you very much. Standing by now is Bob Olson of the Seismic Safety Commission. Mr. Olson, what can you tell us about the earthquake itself?
Thank you very much. I would say that we've got a borderline regional catastrophe here. I'm very concerned about what you just mentioned, the areas that we're not hearing from. And that's the epicentral area, the San Jose, which is a very large metropolitan area, the Monterey Peninsula, the Hollister area, where the San Andreas, Hayward, and Calaveras Faults all come together. Plus, what's coming in here now is we're getting glimpses of widespread damage near the fire. We're seeing some collapsed buildings. There have been other shots of collapsed elevated freeways in San Francisco. And I'm very worried, given the time of day that this took place, about casualties in cars that may have been caught in those particular structures.
Mr. Olson, forgive my ignorance, but what does your organization do?
Well, I was the first director of the California Seismic Safety Commission, and now I'm a private consultant specializing in earthquake and natural hazards mitigation.
What is it we should be looking for now? We are looking, I mean, as you and I are speaking together right now, and I don't, I hope our viewers don't get the wrong impression. San Francisco is not totally on fire. Sometimes it looks that way when we get too much of a close-up there, but we are looking at one particular square block area of San Francisco that is in very, very bad shape. And indeed, there are some other fires in Berkeley and in Oakland. And Bob Olson, I don't know if you can still hear me. I guess we've just lost that line, and that's not too surprising. We're having trouble with telephone lines all over the region. What Bob Olson, who used to be the commissioner of the Seismic Safety Commission, was telling us is that perhaps the most alarming information of the night is not the information that we have, but the information that we do not have from areas like San Jose and Santa Cruz and Hollister. These are areas about 40, 50, 60 miles south of San Francisco, and therefore on the San Andreas Fault, right on the epicenter of this earthquake, which is registered between 6.5 and 6.9 on the Richter scale. No information at the moment from those areas, which could be, and I don't want to alarm people who have families in those areas, but that could be a sign that maybe the worst that has happened there is simply that the telephone system is out. But that is the area that we are most concerned about at the moment, although, as you can see, there is considerable damage in and around San Francisco. Standing by at the White House now is our White House correspondent, my colleague Britt Hume. What's the president doing, and what is the federal government doing or going to do, Britt?
Well, the president, to the extent that he could, has put the federal government in action tonight. He is retired to the family quarters here at the White House. Governor Sununu, his chief of staff, is monitoring the situation. He has called over one of the heads of the Federal Emergency Management Agency who came here and reported. Robert Morris is his name, and he said that the earthquake was a 6.9. That puts it at the highest of the range that we've been told, and that the epicenter was indeed 60 miles southeast of San Francisco. Morris has now returned apparently to the FEMA headquarters, which will be the Washington command post for such operations as are conducted here. Sununu also has reached Department of Defense officials and made sure that the Pentagon is ready to put troops, if necessary, into action.
This is a street in downtown San Francisco. We were emphasizing, and it may be important to note, that our pictures and most of our information now comes from in and around the San Francisco area, but there are large metro areas outside of San Francisco from which we've heard very little. The Silicon Valley is in that area. Monterey, California is in that area. We've been unable to establish telephone contact with these areas. That's not necessarily a signal of any major damage there, but we simply don't know. And when we don't know, we want to be candid with you and tell you we don't know. We get a lot of telephone calls from people who say, well, what about areas outside San Francisco? What's going on there? Answer, we don't know. That is, we don't know for sure. In any case, it's important to remember that there's still much of this story untold and unknown outside of San Francisco proper. Indeed, there's a lot about damage and what has been caused in San Francisco itself that we don't know. Telephone communications with these...
Bob Jamieson, what about you? You're in the middle of traffic there in San Francisco. I'm told that there have been some pretty severe aftershocks as well.
I believe that I felt two before we left the ballpark, but that's all that I know that I can say for certain. I don't believe there have been any since then, but there certainly were a couple after the big jolt.
Again, to remind you, we are looking now at pictures of a portion of San Francisco. This is by no means the entire city. It seems to be confined, the severe damage that we are looking at, to a relatively small area down near Fisherman's Wharf. We believe it's in the area of about Chestnut Street, for those of you who are familiar with the city. About 8 blocks off the wharf, some middle-class homes that have been collapsed there. Those are apartment houses, and a very severe fire that has broken out. But the rest of the city, we are not seeing any fires at the time. We do not yet have, however, any reports of casualties. That, once again, is a picture from a helicopter provided for us by KCRA and KRON, which is our affiliate in San Francisco and in Sacramento. Jimmy Cephalo, once again, what about aftershocks? You feeling them out there?
Tom, the actual shock of the quake lasted for about 40 seconds. Since that time, there have been several slight tremors being felt, no major aftershocks. And right now, it's approximately 2 hours after the quake hit the Bay Area. Right now, the fans are again leaving the area in a quiet fashion. A partial structure damage to the stadium, minimal at best, but we have not felt any major aftershock.
All right, thank you very much. Jimmy Cephalo, we'll ask you to stand by there. I'm told that President Reagan will be sending the Transportation Secretary, Samuel Skinner, to Washington, to the San Francisco area tonight. He made that decision in Washington once he got word of this major earthquake in the Bay Area of San Francisco. All of California really has been waiting, in effect, for the big one to hit, and whether or not this will have any effect on other earthquakes throughout the San Francisco area or down along the San Andreas Fault, we simply cannot say. It is a very inexact science. First pictures we're seeing now of evacuation of possibly some victims from the earthquake. We cannot tell you whether there have been deaths, although we presume that there probably have been some in an area as densely populated as that, or the extent of injuries. NBC's Jim Miklaszewski now is at the White House. President Bush has been watching all this, and he's been putting the federal emergency apparatus into action. Jim Miklaszewski, what can you tell us?
Well, Tom, President Bush was giving a speech to the Republican Governors Association here in Washington at the time the quake struck. The moment he stepped from the podium, he was informed of the incident and given an instant briefing from Chief of Staff Governor John Sununu.
A fortunate thing has happened, and that is the epicenter itself, the exact center of the earthquake, was in a mountainous area, not very heavily populated. Now, all around that is a very heavily populated area, San Francisco, Oakland, Santa Cruz, and so we just have to see. But it may turn out to have been a break, that the epicenter was right in that mountainous area 10 miles north of Santa Cruz, which is right on the cusp, at least, of the world-famous San Andreas Fault. On the telephone now, again, we're going to try to get up Marilyn Cannon in Foster City, which is 20 miles south of San Francisco and closer to the epicenter of the quake. Marilyn Cannon, we hope, on the phone now.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you for being with us, Miss Cannon. What have you seen? What have you heard? What is it you believe we should know?
Well, it was quite a shaker, more so than ever I have felt in the past 18 years that I've lived in California. And the buildings were shaken quite a bit. I work only on a single-story building, and it really moved. Things came off the shelves. All the power went out. I only know of one injury. A Federal Express employee was injured seriously. I don't know the extent of the injuries in one of the buildings. And traffic jams, all the electricity was totally out, so there were, and it was right at 5 o'clock when people were starting to leave, so there was lots of traffic jams. I only work about 15 minutes, not even, say 10 minutes from where I live, and it took me a good 45 minutes to get home just because of the traffic jams. I understood the San Mateo Bridge was shut down. I don't believe there was any problems. I think they did that as a precautionary measure because our office is right at the right near the San Mateo Bridge, and the traffic jam was horrendous because people could not get on, could not get off. It was very difficult. So it was quite interesting. It was a lot more than I have ever experienced.
Marilyn Foster, there, you are actually in Santa Cruz itself, are you?
No. I'm in Foster City, which is at just about 20 miles south of San Francisco.
Have you seen anyone that you would consider to be seriously injured?
No,
Have you seen anyone that you believe to have been killed by the earthquake?
no.
How much damage have you seen? You mentioned you hadn't
lot
seen a
of
lot.
damage. A lot of damage. I came home and my piano was overturned. My china cabinet is totally destroyed. The china and glasses in my china cabinet. In my bedroom, we have a huge mirror over the bed with two wall units on either side that support it, and that was moved. My refrigerator was moved out into the middle of the kitchen floor.
Your refrigerator was moved out into the middle of the
Yeah,
kitchen
my refrigerator moved out into the middle of the floor. So it was interesting because previously we've not experienced any damage other than like lights shaking and maybe dishes falling off of the counter if they've been piled up. That's been the most damage I have ever experienced down here, and so this was a lot of damage, and plants and things are all over, so I know there's going to be considerable damage around.
You think they will when all is said and done, and when we see the light of day tomorrow and begin to count up? You believe that there in the Foster City, California area, there will be considerable damage?
Yeah, I believe so. Maybe not major as far as structural type damages, but there will be lots of things that are broken, I'm sure, in the houses. Just with my neighbors that I've just seen out here, there are things have all fallen off shelves, so there's going to be considerable breakage among the houses.
Thank you very much, Marilyn Cannon, in Foster, California, Foster City, California. We admire your poise and your grace there under what has been pressure. Anytime you go through an earthquake this size, not to overstate it, but not to understate it either, this was an earthquake at least 6.9 and possibly 7.0 on the Richter scale. We did it earlier, but just to try to give you some perspective, we'll mention that the earthquake in Armenia, the Soviet Union, a whole different part of the world with different construction codes and a different situation, but it was in the area of 6.8 or 9 on the Richter scale, that earthquake not so long ago in Armenia. Then in 1971 in the San Fernando Valley of California, there was a 6.5 on the Richter scale, which killed 65 people.
To evacuate, you can imagine what it would be like in a stadium that would hold in excess of 55,000 people, a stadium with relatively small aisles. Again, this was a ballpark built before a lot of the modern stadiums of today, which have
Al,
better egress.
forgive me for interrupting you. I don't know if you can. We're looking at some street scenes right now. Do you have a network line in front of you? Can
Yes,
you
I
see
do.
what
In
we're
fact,
looking
I
at?
can see. I can.
All right,
Yes,
so you can see there really has been some extraordinary damage. Do you happen to recognize that area?
Well, that appears to me to either be the area we're seeing right now in those live shots from above. The houses in the area in which that fire is taking place right now are similar in style to those. Again, I can't tell you for certain that is tape there of what you are seeing or what we have been seeing live, but it appears to me to be in the neighborhood and similar to the types of homes that would be involved in the inferno that we've seen in the Marina District.
Well, indeed, you were saying a moment ago that it is a residential area. That clearly looks like a residential area, and quite frankly, the way that fire looked and the way those buildings were cracked, it would be consistent with everything we've heard. Let me just say again, because we've spent so much time looking at that fire this evening.
Has formed a broad mushroom in the sky. The freeway is closed, so there's no traffic. And the city appears to, in the closing moments of light here, appears to be just absolutely quiet. There doesn't appear to the naked eye to have been any visible damage to some of the taller, more familiar skyscrapers.
And what about the residential areas that you're driving through? What we're looking at in that videotape that was recorded earlier, Bob, which we were not able to see, we are seeing some collapsed homes and some apartment houses down. What about the areas that you're driving through? Are you seeing that same kind of structural damage? People out on the street, or are they still able to live in their apartments?
Tom, we've been through North Beach and the Embarcadero and have seen no evidence of damage.
So there may have been one little fault line there or some structural weaknesses in those houses that we are now looking at.
Yes.
And what are they saying on San Francisco radio? I'm sure you're monitoring that about the amount of deaths and damage in other parts of the city. Can you bring us up to date? We'll just use them as a secondary source.
Well, first of all, Tom, most of the radio stations have been knocked off the air. Some are coming back on now. heard reports of injuries and of deaths. We cannot give you a number because the radio stations that we've been listening to do not appear to have any.
And what about people on the streets? Do they seem to be out of their apartment houses at this stage? Are they still in shock, or are they taking it relatively calmly?
Well, let me refer back to Candlestick Park for a moment. There was absolute shock on the field in the first moments after the earthquake, and actually for some time thereafter. People standing on the field, ball players. I've looked at Rick Russell, who appeared to be just staring off into the stadium for about 15 minutes. He did not appear to move. A friend of mine who is a sports writer was absolutely stricken, and the only thing that he could say was that he was happy he was not in his hotel because his room is on the 45th floor of that hotel. As we have passed through the city, there have been some people outside in their yards and on the street. At the moment, there have been, where we are on this overpass above Interstate 280, above the freeway, some people have been looking off into San Francisco, but things appear strangely normal in the neighborhoods through which we've passed. I only heard one burglar alarm that appeared to have been set off by the earthquake.
And Bob, you've never been through an earthquake before, I don't think. I've known you a long time. I don't remember any of that in your stories. What was it like for you?
Well, one in Japan, Tom. You don't know everything about it. But this was quite an experience because this one was so sudden and so violent. And I thought immediately what it was, but then my first thought was, here I am at the top of this stadium. This thing could just collapse like a souffle, and what would happen? But after that passed, I watched what was going on around me and had the sensation that we were just rolling as though we were on the sea.
Well, one of the advantages that you had is that Candlestick Park, of course, was built at a time when they were conscious of the need to construct those large structures with an eye toward the possibility of just what happened tonight. That is what we all know about earthquakes, of course, is that they strike without warning, and there is no real means now of predicting how and when and where they're going to strike, although San Francisco has been a target for a long time. It is heavily laced with earthquake faults, and the famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, San Andreas fault runs just south of San Francisco and runs right down along the peninsula, and it was very near the San Andreas fault, if not on it, that this earthquake between 6.5 and 7.0 on the Richter scale occurred tonight in the Santa Cruz area. It's worth pointing out we have not yet heard directly from people in that area. We are concentrating our attention on the heavily populated San Francisco area, but there's also Berkeley and San Jose and Carmel and Santa Cruz and San Rafael, all those areas north of San Francisco, as well as north of there. Mr. Fred Krimgold from Virginia Tech, I think it is, if I've got that right.
Yes, that's right.
The fact of the matter is that the San Francisco area is laced heavily with earthquakes, is it not? And if it strikes in one, it's liable to radiate throughout the rest of the faults.
Well, the two primary fault systems in the Bay Area are the San Andreas fault, which goes up through San Francisco, through the peninsula, and out to sea, and in the East Bay, the Hayward fault.
Of the space shuttle Atlantis, we do not.
San Francisco International Airport is limited to outbound flights. There are no inbound flights. Apparently, there have been some cracks in the runway. Oakland Airport, Alameda Naval Air Station, no flights in or out. 2 air traffic controllers at San Francisco International Airport were injured by flying glass, and there has been some structural damage to the air traffic control tower. So these are just a few of the fragmentary pieces of information that we're getting about what's going on at San Francisco right now. The worst news of all is, now that night has fallen in San Francisco, is that the power is out, and we are hearing that the difficulty in containing the fires there, and that one fire, of course, has really dominated our pictures. Once again, let me emphasize, it's not our impression that there are very many fires around the San Francisco area, but there are some others, some over in Oakland, some in Berkeley, and the danger, the fire department says, is they can't use water on those fires, which they believe have been caused by a ruptured gas main, because dousing the fire would simply cause noxious fumes then, toxic noxious fumes, to be emitted. There's an Associated Press advisory that says there will be more information coming on casualties. The information that we have right now is that police are talking about 6 dead in San Francisco, crushed in cars by a building collapse. Now, I can't pretend to tell you that I know where that building collapsed. What we have seen so far, and we've been taking these fragmentary pieces of videotape and information as we get them, what we've seen so far has been of sort of hairline fractures out at Candlestick Park, some major damage to some of the highways leading from Candlestick Park into the center of San Francisco. We have seen that one huge fire, and of course the Bay Bridge, which connects Oakland and San Francisco, one 30 to 50-foot segment of the upper level. That's a 2-tiered bridge at that point. A 30 to 50 segment of that bridge, foot segment of that bridge has collapsed onto the lower section of the bridge. Still standing by at the White House is our White House correspondent, Britt Hume. Britt, any late word on what the federal government is doing?
Yeah, well, Ted, the latest information the White House has, and of course this is the worrisome thing, is that the greatest damage is in the Santa Cruz area. And of course that links with the information you got in that telephone report and suggests that in the areas to the south, from which so little information has come, is
we want to go to our affiliated station KPIX in San Francisco for an update by Dave McElhitten. Let's pick him up. Dave, are you there?
Hello, Dan. Yes, I am. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Well, clearly we're having a feedback problem there, and Dave, if you're listening, hang with us because we'll try to get that cleared up. This, of course, is live television, and we're stringing together live television coverage in circumstances such as these. A lot of strange things happen, and that was one of them. Now, according to Associated Press, and we're following up now on an AP report that we passed along to you a moment ago, 6 people were crushed to death in the cars. It wasn't just one automobile, but in cars, when part of a very old 4-story brick building toppled onto the vehicles. And Lieutenant Jerry Kilroy of the San Francisco Police Department is the basic source on this story. Now, you're seeing earlier scenes videotaped of damage in the general area of San Francisco where that happened, emphasizing again that thus far nearly all of the photographs and much of the information have come only from the San Francisco area itself. Now, according to the California Office of Emergency Preparedness, these pictures that you were seeing just there were from San Francisco, but according to the California Office of Emergency Preparedness, there are buildings reported down in San Benito and Santa Clara counties. That's been confirmed. How many buildings, we don't know. How tall the buildings were, we don't know. Repeating for emphasis, the tallest building that we know of reported to have collapsed was in the San Francisco area, and it was 4 stories high. Some of the tall skyscrapers and big apartment buildings swayed 7 or 8 feet. But we have repeat for emphasis, no reports of any of them collapsing or giving way. Now, unconfirmed reports, underscoring unconfirmed reports from San Benito and Santa Clara counties are that law enforcement officers believe that some people may be trapped inside some of those buildings. We do not have any confirmation of that. Now, that's in the general San Jose area and south. Now, again, we turn to Chris Scholes. We hate to do it in this sort of broken-up fashion, but it's important that people understand the nature of what's happened here. The epicenter just north of Santa Cruz. You were saying apparently it's right in the San Andreas Fault.
Yes.
And it makes a difference which way it rumbles and how far it rumbles down that fault.
Exactly. Because this size of an earthquake is likely to break about 50 kilometers of the fault. And so it's very critical. If it went north, that would bring it essentially adjacent to San Jose, almost up to Menlo Park. If it went to the south, it would go through the Santa Cruz Mountain, which is almost unpopulated, down into San Benito County.
And we have no way of knowing yet which way it...
There hasn't been any reports I've heard from San Jose yet. There's only the reports of heavy damage in San Benito County.
Now, we've had a lot of questions. You probably anticipated this about, well, what's happened to the nuclear power plants? And we're told that the California Lieutenant Governor's Office has been told that the California Gas and Electric Company is shutting down the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant as a, quote, precautionary measure. No surprise there. These are live pictures from San Francisco itself. Again, this is the Marina area fire, and don't be misled by seeing the screen light up here with flames. This is a big fire. It has been a dangerous fire, but it's only one. It's confined to a one-block area. If there are any injuries or deaths in this fire, we do not know of them. It's been seen several times, partly because it's the largest fire among the few that we've seen. We've had those helicopter shots of San Francisco before, and one of the remarkable things in the helicopter shots so far has been how few fires have broken out in San Francisco itself. But in talking
of the bridge which collapsed, it was the pavement which gave through. So the steel structure is apparently intact, but again, several days before they expect to use the Bay Bridge at all. The red and white ferry fleet is offering free rides down at the Jack London Square area to and from San Francisco for those who need to cross the bridge at that point. Other bridges in the area, in fact, every other bridge in the Bay Area except for San Mateo is working. Now let's go back to Evan and Emerald back there in the studio, more or less.
Stand by. Stand by. Thing went. You're on. Thank you.
Okay, that was Suzanne Shaw reporting from Sutro Tower to show us what had happened on the Bay Bridge. And joining us now is Bob Costas of NBC
Hello,
Sports. Were you at Candlestick?
Yeah, I was in the press box right alongside the ABC broadcasting position, and it shook. It shook pretty well, and you got that reaction of nervous laughter from people at first. After all, the people I was surrounded with are news people. They tend to be, as a group, sports writers tend to be cynical, and they were nervous titters at first. But then after it stopped, you saw the blood drain from people's faces, and they couldn't hide how shaken they were by it. And then you wonder, especially those who are not natives of this area and have no background in having been through earthquakes or hearing other people talk about it, they wonder what's next, if that was just the prelude to something bigger. And people were definitely very shaken.
Did you see any structural damage to Candlestick or any injuries?
No, I didn't.
Well, this scene, if somebody could have been hurt in those cars. This is the San Francisco Bridge. San Francisco Bridge. The Lieutenant Governor, Leo McCarthy of California, is on the telephone. The Governor, Duke Majan, being out of the country, so the Lieutenant Governor is in charge. Lieutenant Governor McCarthy, thank you for being with us. What's the most important thing that your friends and neighbors around the country should know about what's happened in California tonight?
Well, there's tremendous property damage around the Bay Area, but so far we are trying to confirm whether there is.
Then you saw not panic.
Another thing that came to mind, Ted, is the fact that as many structures in this area are forced to do through the years, they must undergo extensive examination, and the officials come in from time to time and take a look at better earthquake-proofing measures. And I know for a fact it'll come to light later on. I don't have any reference material with me right now, obviously, but Candlestick Park underwent a relatively extensive earthquake check, and in fact some extra poles were added to help support the roof above the upper deck. As I recall, that was 8 or 9 years ago. Now, whether or not that came into play, I can't tell you.
Al, at the risk of being repetitious, I just don't want our viewers to become excessively
About the situation when you left?
Well, I left, I would say, about
to make sure that there's no severe danger there to motorists.
As part of our continuing live CBS News coverage of the earthquake, Lieutenant Governor McCarthy, I want to go back and make sure we understand. Do you have any confirmed reports of deaths?
No, we do not. We have unconfirmed reports that there may be up to 5 deaths in the San Francisco area, and we're trying now to get any confirmation of those.
We don't want to confuse our listeners and viewers that Associated Press reported earlier that police had told them that there were 6 people killed in the collapse of a building on some automobiles. CBS News was told by 2 separate law enforcement officers that 1 person was killed on the San Francisco Bay Bridge. Now, we believe this is the building. These are pictures of the building partially collapsed on the automobiles, believed to have killed 6 people. But, Lieutenant Governor, I understand and we appreciate the fact that you can't say something's confirmed unless you've had it confirmed by a number of sources. We appreciate that.
That's right.
Extent of injuries in the area. What reports are you receiving from hospitals and others about injuries?
Amazingly, very limited so far. This was quite a shake, and it came at a very tough time when people were getting out of work. There's a lot of glass all over the San Francisco downtown streets, and it's astounding that we have not heard a lot worse news than we've heard so far.
Lieutenant Governor McCarthy, what can be done by people outside California to help you at the moment?
Well, we really want to get news to them of any family or friends that they have, and we will issue an assessment of the damage within 2 hours so that people know if there are relatives or friends here that may have been harmed.
Let me come straight at you, Lieutenant Governor, with a question that is always asked in these situations is, well, let me tell you, if things are worse than they're telling us, they're going to keep it secret from us. They're not going to level with us about it if there's severe damage and a lot of injuries and that sort of thing. Will you address yourself directly and specifically to that kind of talk?
Sure. We will release any information we have about confirmed deaths or injuries, Dan. This is not anything any of us should play around with. The public has a right to have that information.
And to people in Northern California, in the quake area, who may be able to get these reports either on radio and television, tick off a one or two item list of things they can and should do, and for that matter, should not do.
They should really not leave their homes at this point because the transportation systems around the Bay Area are clogged rather badly. The bridges are shut down. At least 2 of the Bay Area airports are shut down temporarily. And the highways, several major highways are in serious trouble.
Lieutenant Governor, I don't know whether you're watching your CBS station coverage here. We hope you are. We're showing now a videotape of a damaged automobile on the San Francisco Bay Bridge, and there's a report, unconfirmed, that someone might be trapped in that car. And what you saw there were efforts of rescue workers to get in and see whether there was anyone in that automobile on the San Francisco Bay Bridge. Now, Jerry Shields, a spokeswoman for the Merritt Hospital in Oakland, California, is on the telephone. Ms. Shields, how many injuries in your hospital?
We've had no injuries in our hospital in terms of employees or volunteers, thank heaven. We certainly did feel the shake. We have had, in the last couple of hours, a couple of dozen of people come in through the ER, and that's a range of injuries. Most of them have not been that would be described as serious, and one possibly critical.
You were there when the earthquake shook the area. What did you feel and see and hear?
It was major. I mean, it definitely was the type of quake that lasted long enough for you to say, this is it. This is absolutely it. So when it stopped, it was wonderful.
Given that, you say it was the worst one you've been through, and it was definitely major, were your words. Are you surprised that you aren't seeing and hearing about more injuries?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised. It's hard to know, what's happened outside. Again, I'm very...
Relied on BART, on motorized buses, and on trolley cars. He's pretty well paralyzed.
Thank you very much, Bob Jamieson, who is in a car in San Francisco at this hour. We just don't know how many people have been hurt or injured or have died in all of this. We have very spotty figures at this hour. We are told 7 people. We just heard some very dramatic testimony just a few moments ago from a San Francisco fireman who talked about pulling people from a brick building that collapsed. It appeared to me to be right near the entrance to the Oakland Bay Bridge. That would make it on the south side of San Francisco as you're heading toward the airport. And some of that construction is not as strong there as it might be in other parts of the city. San Francisco is one of those cities in California that has paid a lot of attention to its construction. Fred Krimgold is an associate dean of the School of Architecture in Virginia Tech. He pays a lot of attention to architecture, and he pays a lot of attention to what goes on in earthquake areas. The Bay Bridge, and is that the Bay Bridge that we're looking at, or is that the San Mateo Bridge? I'm not sure. It looks more to me like the San Mateo Bridge, quite honestly, folks. We're getting this picture in as we talk. I don't think that's the Bay Bridge. I could be wrong. But it does look more like the San Mateo Bridge or one of the other bridges up and down. What about the bridges in the San Francisco Bay Area, whether the Bay Bridge or San Mateo or San Rafael or whatever, Mr. Krimgold? Are they in pretty good shape?
The The bridges are certainly a sensitive point because the city of San Francisco is isolated on 3 sides without the service of the bridges. These bridges were constructed for the most part during the 30s and
earthquake very well. And again, the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge is open and has remained open throughout this earthquake crisis. This is the way to get to other parts of the Bay Area if you have to. Don?
All right, Carol. Well, thank you. Yes, obviously, it's going to be a very difficult commute for people to get home to the East Bay tonight, but we understand that that bridge and also the ones south of the Bay Bridge will be open, we hope. Now, we'll go back to the Marina District. As we told you earlier, this is obviously an area that has been very hard hit. Fire crews coming into this inferno as apartment buildings collapsed. Remember, the Marina District was filled for is landfill, and therefore a number of the very expensive apartments and townhouses in this area have collapsed, fire burning unchecked. They're trying, it's been very difficult. There have been some injuries, it appears. Some people perhaps more panicked than anything else as they try to evacuate them from the homes, but the fire burns on. San Francisco's Marina District, an inferno.
We're painting on the second floor, and everything just started shaking, and it's a plaster and lath building, and just whole sheets of plaster were coming off the ceiling and the walls. And I was in the bathroom painting, Randy was in the living room. I ran to the bathroom door and stood there, and he was trying to get into a doorway, and the floor was falling at such an angle it made him fall down.
There had been a courtyard in the backyard, and all the rubble and the pipes from the boiler all had fallen over, so we had to crawl over. And I held the baby so we could crawl over and hand the baby from one to another so we could crawl across all the debris in the back.
Again, you see the Marina District, the Jefferson Divisadero area where these very expensive buildings have collapsed, and the fire continues as the San Francisco Fire Department tries to fight it. This was a 4-story building, and that's the kind of problem. They are trying to evacuate people who may have been inside. A lot of people at home at that time or during the commute hour as the earthquake struck at 5:04 this afternoon in Northern California. We have an unofficial word, or it perhaps is official now. 7 people, we know 7 people have died in this crash, including the one, or in this quake rather, including the one when an old building south of Market collapsed on people in automobiles. And there is one other death, too, perhaps one on the Bay Bridge when that section of it collapsed. But here trying to get people out of their homes, some injuries, perhaps just panic as well. And this, if it indeed is the big one that we've heard so much about, and people trying to do whatever they can to stop the fire. But part of the problem, obviously, is gas.
Prepare for 3 days of no services. You got 90 minutes of light left. You better make use of your time. Standing here ain't doing nothing.
And it's dark now. Indeed, there is a problem with water pipes bursting all over Northern California. People are on the streets. They're not going home. There is gridlock traffic-wise while people try to get across the Golden Gate Bridge, which apparently is okay, although 19th Avenue, one of the approaches to the Golden Gate Bridge, is closed because one of the lanes there has apparently collapsed.
Prepare yourselves! Prepare yourselves! Shut off the gas! Shut off electricity! Store water in your bathtub! Don't expect services for 72 hours!
All right, that is a warning from police, and that is part of the problem here, that we have no electricity. There's no power. The city virtually dark at this hour, perhaps illuminated only by that monstrous fire in the Marina District. Sewer lines have collapsed. Water lines are also torn apart. They're advising to stock up, as you heard, on bottled water. 280 freeway is closed in San Francisco. San Mateo Bridge, we'll find out the latest there because that's certainly one of the accesses to the East Bay. Here's Lisa Stark. Lisa?
Well, we were at the San Mateo Bridge earlier, Don, and I can tell you it was closed at that time. I do not know if it is still closed. I am sorry, because at this point we have moved north to the Amfac Hotel in Burlingame. The hotel is behind me. What you can see is what is left of the elevator shaft of this 10-story hotel, a 25-year-old hotel. Apparently what happened is a 1,500-gallon water tank on the roof sheared off when the quake hit. It hit the elevator shaft, took the shaft and the elevator down with it. I can tell you no one was in the elevator apparently at the time. A very good stroke of good luck, and in fact, there were no major injuries here. Meeting at the hotel were 500 delegates from the California State Baptist Convention. They are all okay. They want me to send word out to their loved ones tonight, to their family, to their friends, that they all escaped just fine. The hotel has been evacuated. As you can well imagine, there's extensive damage. Not.
Let me just fill in for you. We have been listening in and viewing as KGO in San Francisco, our station out in San Francisco, as their reporters are trying to bring the viewers of the Bay Area up to date on what is happening. Let's go back now to that report.
Which are still open, although there is no power in this area. All of the hotels here are dark. Electricity is out here as it is in most other places. And I'm standing on Bayshore Boulevard in front of the hotel. Much of the road is closed. A few cars are getting through southbound, but the road is completely blocked off northbound. We did see one gentleman taken away in an ambulance from here. He was not seriously hurt, but he apparently fell and suffered bruises and contusions. He has been taken to the hospital. But again, here at the AmFac Hotel, again, major damage to the front of this hotel as the elevator...
What a picture. We get an opportunity to run that back, and one car's backing out. Well, no wonder. That was a photograph of a picture taken on a home video of the San Francisco Bay Bridge, a section of it actually collapsing. If we get an opportunity, Elaine Bernardis in our control room, let's try to run that back through again. It's the most dramatic picture we've had thus far of what it was like to go through this strong, violent earthquake. Well, we'll try to get that up for you in a moment. That was rather startling. But we do want to underscore with you that this earthquake, while a major one and a strong one and a violent one, it has, on the best available information, caused some death. We believe that there are 7 people now confirmed dead. That's on the basis of our own reports and the Associated Press reports, those reports based on at least 2 sources. We believe that there are 7 confirmed dead. Reports of injuries are only scattered thus far, but thus far it does not appear, we have not a single confirmed report yet of any critical injuries. High buildings, what were the damages what was the damage to high buildings? So far as we know, not great in the San Francisco area. The tallest building known to have collapsed, according to eyewitness reports, was a 4-story building in the San Francisco building. Now let's show you again this amateur video of what happened on the San Francisco Bridge when the earthquake hit. People are just driving along. It begins to sway. A part of the bridge gives way. The second car right behind that first one skids to a halt and begins to back away. Well, earthquakes, in addition to being strange for those of us, unlike yourself, Chris Scholes of Columbia, who are not experts, are scary. But having said that, let's take a look at your little map here, if we can. I know I don't want to embarrass you, but this is a...
It's a bit of a scribble.
Okay, this is really a scribble, but this is the Northern California coastline?
Yes, this is the coastline. This is San Francisco, and so this is the bay. This is San Jose.
Damage to Candlestick Park. Buildings are down in San Francisco. At least 5, possibly as many as 7 deaths so far. That total could go considerably higher. It does seem that a 2-square block area just south of Fisherman's Wharf is suffering the greatest damage in the city itself. Fires and some collapsed apartment houses and residential areas there. By and large, the city of San Francisco, which was rebuilt after 1906 and the great earthquake that occurred then, which was above 8 at that time, has been put back together in pretty good form. We still don't know, however, what happened in Santa Cruz. I did hear one earlier radio report of highways being buckled. Robert Brazil is our NBC News science correspondent. He is in Orlando tonight, where he has been awaiting the liftoff of the Atlanta shuttle, postponed until tomorrow. And Bob, let's talk for just a few moments, if we can, about earthquakes and the Richter scale. Let's begin with that. 6.9 is what we're hearing. That is a major shaker.
It certainly is, Tom. That's as big as the earthquake that hit Armenia and did a considerable amount of damage. But of course, as we discussed on the air at the time, Armenia didn't have the kind of building code that San Francisco did. One of the things that's interesting about this earthquake is that it was kind of eerily forecast very recently in a federal government report that talked about where the damage might be, and it did point out that those faults in the South Bay were at great risk and enough, and so much attention.
For the marina area where this enormous fire is blazing, you've got about 90 minutes of daylight left. That clearly was a couple of hours ago. Do what you have to do and do it right now, because prepare for 3 days of no services. And that was repeated a little bit later on. 72 hours of no services. By that, I am sure they mean gas and water and electricity and telephones. All right, we're now going to go to Christy Welter at San Jose Hospital for a status report there. Christy?
This is Christy Welter at San Jose Medical Center, and we have had 4 patients in tonight, one of whom just died of cardiac arrest. The others are victims of things falling on them, and at this point, we're not sure of their condition. We have been told to expect some other patients. We're a trauma center, so we're obviously on call 24 hours a day. There is one hospital that we have been told has structural damage and may have to evacuate some patients, but we have not been, it's not been confirmed when or how many.
Christy, can you give us some sense of overall what conditions are in San Jose? I mean, did the earthquake strike heavily there? Were there aftershocks? How long did it last? And do you have any sense of what kind of damage there is throughout the city?
There's a lot of damage in stores. I was at a meeting when it happened away from the medical center, and as I left, there was no electricity there, and there were people in an elevator that they were trying to extricate. All the stoplights are out. Most businesses have closed because things have fallen off their shelves.
Christy, let me interrupt you just for 1 minute, because we're looking at a map that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about right now. You're in San Jose, which is some miles south of the area we were looking at right now. Go ahead, please.
Yes. San Jose has 15 cities in the county, and some of the main arteries are now closed, so people are still trying to get home. They've been told...
Shot at, I suppose. But what happens is that you think that you can always count on Mother Earth, that it will be still, and it begins to move, and there is simply no place to hide. You can run into a door frame, which is what you're told to do, or outside or whatever, but if the earth continues to shake, as it did quite dramatically tonight, and think of those 60,000 fans at Candlestick Park in the upper tiers when that began to happen. There is no hiding place.
And 1 killed on the San Francisco Bay Bridge for a total of 7 killed. Now, in Santa Cruz, the hospital report is that they are getting some patients evacuated from the Watsonville Hospital in Watsonville, California. Watsonville closer to the epicenter. Remember, the epicenter now pinpointed in the San Andreas Fault, about 8 miles north of Santa Cruz. Watsonville, California, being closer to that epicenter, the hospital was evacuated there. We don't know whether it was evacuated as a precaution or for some other reason. That on the basis of the information so far, it may very well have been as a precaution. Now, we also have, is it Santa or Anna Craig? Santa Craig of the San Francisco General Hospital. She's in the trauma center there. Thank you for helping us out. How many injuries reported, and what's the situation there? Miss Craig? Well, I believe we've lost her for the moment, and as we've said sometimes tonight, that's the way it goes with live television. Now, to bring you up to date on what we know and what we don't know about this earthquake, the violent earthquake rocked Northern California at about 8:04 Eastern Daylight Time, 5:04 Pacific Daylight Time. It caved in a section of the San Francisco Bay Bridge. If you've been with us, you saw that this is a picture of the automobile that crashed there when the Bay Bridge gave way. You may have seen that home video we had earlier of the car actually going into that. We don't know the extent of injuries or the fate of the person in the automobile. The World Series game scheduled for tonight was actually there are 2 cars down in that. We didn't see the second one earlier on this. This is a new piece of videotape of that same scene in the San Francisco Bay Bridge. This is Marina District Fire in San Francisco, one which we've shown before, again emphasizing that there have been some fires breaking out in San Francisco and in other areas, but the surprise thus far is how few fires we have seen and have been reported. That's along with the surprise of how few deaths have been confirmed thus far and how few serious injuries have been confirmed given the magnitude of the earthquake. But you can say, well, we're getting into the third hour of this coverage, not quite yet the third hour, but remember what a wide area and what a highly populated area was involved here, and so it's still too early to say anything other than let's stick with the facts, let's don't speculate about what may or may not have happened. On the telephone now is Mr. William Medigovich, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, please, who is Director of the Office of Emergency Services for the state of California. Thank you for helping us out here. What do we know about deaths and injuries, please, sir?
We haven't heard anything, and it's confirming more than what you have received there. What we are surprised and pleasantly surprised is that the reports from our network of the medical providers has not been, we have not been overwhelmed with reports. So our radio amateur circuit, which generally monitors that kind of activity, has not been very active, which is a good sign. We are activating the 143rd Combat Support Hospital with the Guard, putting them on standby, anticipating we may have to move them into an area that will be designated shortly for a casualty collection point. As I say, we still have not had any hard information that would necessitate that action yet, but we're just being prudent in that regard.
Forgive me, please go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the utility damages, I just talked over to the utilities coordinator representing Pacific Gas and Electric and other utilities in the area, and we were fortunate there. There have not been any major damages to the system, so they will, in all likelihood, be rolling back in sections again to restore power there. Same holds true for the natural gas pipelines. We, fortunately, have not had any major breaks in that area other than minor ones, and that may be a contributing factor to the lack of fires.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you think is vital for our listeners and viewers to know?
Well, I think for the people in the Bay Area, we've had our earthquake plans, and we've had our annual earthquake effort campaign each year. And in fact, last August, we had our major exercise with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, where we had the Vice President's wife, Marilyn Quayle, out here. So we did get a chance to test our plan, and now we're testing it for real.
Thank you very much, and we may want to be back in touch with you as time goes along. Updating you on our CBS News live coverage, Dan Rather in New York, on what we know and don't know about the major earthquake that hit Northern California tonight, and what we don't know is far greater than what we know. There is, unfortunately, from the California Highway Patrol, talking to CBS News, the California Highway Patrol reports that in the City Garden Mall in Santa Cruz, that at least a part of the mall collapsed.
And it looks like 2 cars trapped there. Another section of the freeway now. See, I can't tell exactly where that is. That does look like it's the approach to the bridge, and that has really been severely buckled. As you can see, it has just been turned into a ribbon, if you will, by this 6.9 on the Richter scale earthquake that occurred. Yes, that does appear to be, and then another section just to the left of your picture, which is even more severely collapsed.
Video, but the mayor says the city has had relatively minor damage. All vital facilities, he says, are operational. The fire chief, public health director, and police chief are all at the command center.
KRON, which is our affiliate in San Francisco, live reports right now.
Unfortunately, I have a new fire that just handed me. There's a major fire. It's near Page Mill Road. That's in the Palo Alto area. That's south of San Francisco, halfway to San Jose, near the Stanford campus. A major fire at Page Mill Road. We have no details as to what is burning
Also
there.
earlier reports of a major fire in Berkeley, building engulfed in flames over there. In Richmond, the city of Richmond to the north, several buildings had collapsed over there. From the Marin side over in Sonoma, we were told there were no injuries over there. And again in San Francisco, right now there's a problem in the Marina district with firefighters having trouble controlling that fire, people trapped inside buildings too.
If there's not enough problem on the Bay Bridge, the video you just saw of its collapse, now the approaches to the Bay Bridge are also in trouble. On the eastern end of the Bay Bridge is a toll plaza, and that is Highway 580. That highway is cracked and buckled. It is at sea level. Excuse me, it's where the bay is. Water is now coming onto the roadway, and into that area at the toll plaza. So this is where we got the information, in fact, that the bridge
One
will be down
engineer
for
says
some
that
time.
it could be weeks before the bridge is open again. And we heard earlier from our production assistant, Claudia Gomez, who was on the Bay Bridge when the earthquake hit, and she described it. Well, first of all, she said there was a tremendous jolt. She was on a bus, and then everyone thought it was okay, and they drove on. And then about 10 seconds later, everything came to stop. People were getting out of their cars. They had seen that collapsed section, and people fled the bridge. And now we're joined by Rita Shannon.
Just back from San Francisco Airport, which is closed. We should say that San Jose is open and Oakland is open. Moffett Field is open. San Francisco is closed?
San Francisco is closed. No incoming flights, no outgoing flights. All of the terminals have been evacuated. And needless to say, a lot of confused people out on the street as we got there right after the quake. Everyone was taken out of the terminals, told to get out of there as best they could. They didn't know where they were going, but just to get away from it, not to go back in because they were worried about aftershocks. Now, some of these people were, of course, trying to make connecting flights. They didn't know where some family was. Some of the taxi drivers, though, showed a lot of heart by saying, anybody's hurt, come on, I'll take you to a hospital. But here you can see the falling tile. If the shot were a little wider, you could see that the doors are off their hinges, that everything's broken away. There were a lot of people that were injured simply from what you see there. A lot of falling debris, a lot of broken glass. And as I rushed in to use a phone, the phones weren't working too well, but the man said, get out of here later, I'm going to throw you out. So they were doing a pretty good job. There is a huge gas leak in one of the terminals, and they were worried very much about that and trying to get people out, especially if they were smoking. Once again, you will see a lot of people just walking down toward Highway 101 trying to get out of there, to get to the city, to find out what was going on. Just mass confusion, but I must say that people handled themselves very well, and security at the airport really rose to the occasion and kept everyone as calm as possible. And at this point, a lot of people are just trying to get transportation out. And people finally gave up on that, started simply walking down the ramp to get to the highway.
We are listening in on and sharing the work of KRON, which is our San Francisco affiliate. They're doing the best that they can under very trying circumstances. Emergency backup power in that city, which has been hit very hard by an earthquake which struck in the Santa Cruz area, south of San Francisco, in the peninsula area near Monterey.
Yet were killed. More than 40 at that place alone.
That's correct.
That is not good news.
No, it's not.
The death toll, we believe at CBS News, Mark Well, Governor, that this is our report and not yours, would be that 40 plus 13 others for a known death toll now of 53, and perhaps more than that, because I believe I heard you say, Lieutenant Governor McCarthy, and correct me if you did not, that it may be over 40 people killed in that Highway 880 collapse in Oakland.
That's correct, Dan. They think it could be worse than 40, but that's all they've identified so far.
What else do you know, Lieutenant Governor?
Well, we're trying to confirm whether any other deaths around the Bay Area, and Dan, we don't have anything solid yet beyond the tragic news from Oakland.
And repeating, if necessary for emphasis, what are the important steps that people who are in the area of the earthquake should take, and what should they not do?
Stay home. Don't complicate the transportation glut that's out there. Please appreciate that the highways are not safe right now, that they're being inspected by state and local transportation agencies.
Taped earlier from the Goodyear blimp is a fire in the marina section of San Francisco, a residential area, and even though you see water being poured...
We'll be watching the area very closely. Around here, people are working kind of feverishly, answering phones. We've seen lots of equipment around here. How far away was this shock recorded?
This earthquake was recorded around the world, and we have heard from many of the foreign countries. Magnitude 6.9 is strong enough to be recorded throughout the world.
And how far was it felt?
So far, we have it being felt in Nevada and throughout California. That's the extent of the felt that we've had, but been recorded throughout the world.
Waverly Person, thanks very much. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, John Ferrugia in Denver, Colorado tonight with our station KCNC out there and a representative of the National Earthquake Center. Lieutenant Governor Leo McCarthy, who is on duty for the state of California, says that there are 40 people dead on Route 880, which is the interstate which runs right beside Oakland, California. We are told that it was severely hit by this earthquake tonight. That has not yet been absolutely confirmed. That is that certainly is the worst news that we have heard tonight from the San Francisco Bay Area. 40 dead in the collapse of Route 880. We will work now to see if we can't get some absolute confirmation of that, some more details on it. Route 880 runs right beside the Oakland Coliseum, which is where the baseball game would be played if the series were to go on. Tonight, of course, it was canceled or at least postponed for a long time when the earthquake struck during pregame ceremonies at Candlestick Park just across the bay in San Francisco. So this is what we know at this hour. An earthquake with an epicenter near Santa Cruz, California, south of San Francisco on the peninsula. 6.9, a very big earthquake, hit that area at about 5:04 Pacific time. That would make it 7:04 in the Midwest and 8:04 in the East. And there has been a lot of structural damage to bridges and highways. And in the city of San Francisco, we cannot yet tell you what is going on. We do have reports of fires in Berkeley, but we don't know what has happened in Monterey or in Carmel or in Santa Cruz itself, which is the home of one of the branches of the University of California. We do have this report of 40 dead on Route 880, at least 5 dead in San Francisco, and possibly 1 or 2 dead when two sections of the San Francisco to Oakland Bay Bridge collapsed. This is what President Bush had to say earlier this evening when he was informed of this growing tragedy in the Northern California area.
It's still coming in, so we don't know.
We're beginning now to move personnel from the outlining areas into the San Francisco and Oakland areas where we have the heaviest damage.
The pictures on our screen now are those of Highway 101. You can see large sections of that highway gave way, other sections of it badly cracked, automobiles strewn about like toys on this Highway 101. Now, this earthquake occurred at approximately 8:04 Eastern Daylight Time, 5:04 Pacific Daylight Time. And although that's been a while ago, keep in mind how spotty and faulty communications have been and continue to be. The reports of death, we believe that at least 53 people, and probably more than that, have been killed. That's based on trying to double source everything. At least 53 persons dead, 6 in San Francisco when a building collapsed on some cars, 1 on the San Francisco Bay Bridge, 7 at a shopping mall in Santa Cruz, and another 40-plus killed on that Highway 880 collapse in Oakland, California. Now, that's what we know and what we don't know up to this moment as part of our CBS News continuing live coverage of the earthquake. What we has been decided that we will do here at CBS News, David Burke, the CBS News president, has decided that what we will do is we'll leave the air here in a few seconds to turn you over to your local station, our affiliated stations, many of whom have their newscasts coming up for 15 minutes or a half hour, in most cases a half hour. So we're going to leave the air now, continue to gather information and photographs. We will be back on the air at the half-hour mark. That would be 11:30 in the East. So for now, Dan Rather with CBS News. Stay here with us for your late local news. We'll be back with you in a half hour.
This has been a CBS News special report.
Californians are a hardy breed, obviously. They're used to small earthquakes from time to time. They've had them in Northern California over the years. Anyone who has lived out there has experienced them, but nothing like a 6.9 shaker has struck that area in a very, very long time. If you're wondering, it was 1906 when the big San Francisco earthquake struck that leveled that city, a series of disastrous fires, and of course, an earthquake that was over 8 on what we now know as the Richter scale. We continue to point out to you that we do not know what has happened, specifically in some of those areas south and essentially east of San Francisco in the peninsula area where the epicenter occurred. It does seem that most of the damage, and we're hearing this from the mayor, Art Agnos of San Francisco as well, has pretty much been controlled now in that area, although some fires continue to burn out of control. We're getting these really frightening reports from the Oakland Bay area of at least 40 people killed in the collapse of Interstate 880, which runs alongside the San Francisco Bay and the city of Oakland itself. I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC News, and we will have continuing coverage of this earthquake tragedy in Northern California.
Talking about the earthquake that hit all the way from San Francisco in the north down to Santa Cruz in the southern part of the California coast. Just a few minutes ago, I talked to a man by the name of Joe Stillwagon, who is from Ann Arbor, Michigan, who now lives in Santa Cruz, and he says the situation there is very, very bad. We are now editing that interview. It was a big one in California. They talk about the big one out there. A violent earthquake rocking Northern California tonight. Take a break here. You want to break for a commercial? We're going to break for a commercial. We'll be back with our Channel 7 coverage for you in just a moment.
Hits San Francisco, knocking out part of the San Francisco Bay Bridge. There are reports of a number of people dead. There are reports of critical injuries. Those reports are still unclear. Good evening. I'm Dana.
San Francisco, most of the power is out. Many of the bridges into and out of the city have been shut down. Some have now been reopened. Fires are burning in the city. The quake hit at 5:04 this afternoon as San Francisco workers were heading home. Some of those workers were on the Nimitz Freeway as portions of it collapsed. The upper portion falling onto the lower deck. A portion of the Bay Bridge, which links San Francisco and Oakland, collapsed. Several people were injured there. We now have reports of death there. Also, several people reported in the water. It is not known if the Coast Guard was able to pick them up. The biggest of the fires is burning in the Marina district of the city. That's an area of older buildings, many apartment buildings. It's near the Golden Gate Bridge. There was the smell of gas reported all over the city. The temblor was apparently centered about 10 miles to the north of Santa Cruz in the Hollister area. That's a rural area south of San Jose. There are deaths reported in Hollister, severe damage both there and in San Jose. Also deaths reported in Santa Cruz and fires burning in that city right now. The quake was felt hundreds of miles away from the epicenter, felt in Reno, Nevada, which is more than 200 miles away. It was felt in Sacramento, 100 miles to the northeast, as far south as San Luis Obispo. The earthquake was measured at 7.0 on the Richter scale. That is a major quake capable of widespread and heavy damage. And as you can see, that has happened tonight in San Francisco and in other parts of Northern California. What was apparently so destructive about this quake was its duration, a full 15 seconds. San Francisco's main airport is...
The press is now saying at least 47 people were killed in this earthquake, which has, we are told by experts, ranged anywhere from 6.9 to the Richter scale to over 7.2 on the Richter scale, and that earthquake monitoring stations all over the world did register that quake that hit earlier this evening in San Francisco, or about 50 miles south of it and a little bit to the west. It has been a big one, and they use that phrase in California. This violent earthquake rocking Northern California, heading south along the San Andreas Fault tonight. There is tremendous property destruction, and there is death to report.
Prepare yourselves! Prepare yourselves! Shut off the gas! Shut off electricity! Store water in your bathtub! Don't expect services for 72 hours!
The San Francisco skyline choked in a cloud of smoke and flames, with fires triggered off by this massive jolt. It hit 5:04 Pacific time, knocking out power, knocking out telephones, knocking out the World Series, knocking it right off the air. Preliminary reports indicating the quake measured at least 6.9 on the Richter scale. That is classified as a major quake capable of widespread heavy damage and death. The punch collapsed a 50-foot section of the San Francisco Bay Bridge, several cars trapped with people waiting to be rescued. So far, the only confirmed one death occurred on the bridge, which is one of two main arteries from Oakland to San Francisco, the two cities that are involved in the World Series. Other reports indicating at least 6 other people died in one brick building when it toppled on top of their automobiles. AP saying there are at least 47 dead. Major problems on the roads. One of them a double-decker road, a highway. It did collapse. It turned into kind of a concrete sandwich. One part of it buckling, falling to the ground. No word on whether people may have been trapped when the two later toppled. It is a major freeway, and there are probably casualties. Somebody with a home video camera captured the moments when the quake hit. Look very, very closely. Now, you're going to see the electric and the phone wires trembling from the force here. One man who's lived in this city by the bay all of his life has been through a few quakes in his time. By telephone, he told me, Channel 7 News, this was the worst.
Tremendous shake, not a roll, it was just a shake, and everything was just, the buildings are moving, the concrete was cracking, and everything, it's hard to
can measure them, but we cannot predict them. And when the big one hit, Game 3 of the World Series was just about to get underway at windy Candlestick Park. The only strike thrown tonight was by Mother Nature. Here's the broadcast just moments before the jolt knocked ABC off the screens.
Allowing Jose Canseco to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take Candlestick Park. And initially, the crowd is very calm. There was
More than 60,000 frightened people on hand at the ballpark tonight. There apparently was no panic. Everybody evacuating in orderly fashion. The quake was centered near Santa Cruz, California. That's about 50, 60 miles south of San Francisco itself. Damage reported very, very heavy throughout the Santa Cruz area. I was able to contact a man from Ann Arbor who now lives there. He says the aftermath is incredible.
It's pretty bad. A lot of bridges have collapsed, overpasses. All the airports are shut down.
Do you people have electrical power?
Yeah, power's out. Everything's out. I'm surprised the phone is working, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Have you been able to get into the heavily damaged area?
No, I've just been locally, and pretty much just because the power's off, everybody's just kind of standing around, wandering, not knowing what to do.
You don't have television?
No, not at all. To be honest with you, I'm originally from Michigan. I moved out about 5 years ago, and I'll tell you, it'll make you want to move back.
Yeah, Joe said that one of the reports, Joe Stillwagon, the guy from Ann Arbor, told me, I said, have you heard anything about how long it's going to take before the safety experts will be able to evaluate the...
Thank you, Dan. That was News 4's Dan Mountley reporting live from Metro Airport on airline...
In Southfield, Carl Grammel. Mr. Grammel, we have just experienced a bridge disaster in Michigan up at Mackinac when a car went off the bridge there. That accident raised questions about bridge design, but I'm wondering, how do you design any bridge to survive an earthquake?
Well, you don't do that very easily, Mort. Certainly the major bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge and the Oakland Bay Bridge are such major structures that they have to be designed with a concern for earthquakes. You can see from the photograph that the bridge collapsed right over a pier, and that, of course, is where the effect of the earthquake is going to be the most severe. But the greater damage has been suffered on expressway bridges throughout that area. I think you're going to find the death toll is going to be the greatest as a result of collapses of interstate bridges. I understand that Highway Bridge 880, which runs on the east shore of Oakland Bay, collapsed. It's a double-deck bridge. The upper deck pancaked on the lower deck, and it in turn collapsed to the street level below that. I understand that there are death reports exceeding 40 people that have already been found killed in that collapse.
Yes, that is the section of highway that runs very close to Candlestick Park, so we don't know if there were people leaving the park who might have been caught in that or coming into the park, of course, this having happened before the game was canceled. Now, from what you've seen up to this point, very quickly assess the damage to the Bay Bridge. Is it repairable?
It's repairable, but it's going to take quite a bit of time to repair it, and I think it's going to be closed for a long period of time, Mort. Number one, the visible damage obviously suggests that both the east and westbound decks of that bridge aren't going to be operable. Secondly, that bridge has to be thoroughly inspected by experts before any part of it can be put back in use.
Well, aside from the tremendous death toll which we can anticipate from a quake of this magnitude, it's almost impossible to calculate the amount of damage that will be done, the physical damage, when this is all counted. Mr. Grammel, thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
We'll have much more coverage of the San Francisco earthquake coming up on the Night Beat.
And also ahead, I'll continue my series, Is Your Marriage in Trouble? With a look at how...
Yeah. For instance, in the state of Florida, as you well know, the spaceship Atlantis, the shuttles Atlantis, is scheduled to be sent into orbit. And, of course, it does contain the Galileo space probe that will investigate distant Jupiter. Word tonight is that when that earthquake hit in Northern California, it did some damage to the Air Force Station, which is located in Sunnyvale, California. That Air Force Station is the station that is going to be in charge of the Galileo probe to Jupiter. And they don't know the extent of the damage, but apparently it could mean that the spaceship sitting down in Florida, Atlantis, is going to sit there for a few days until they find out how much the earthquake damaged that monitoring station in Northern California. So we do live in a small world, and something like this has great impact. We're going to take a commercial break at this point. As I indicated at the beginning, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants tonight, and all kinds of phone lines going out and crews working trying to find out just what the situation is in San Francisco regarding the quake. We'll be back with more coverage in just a moment.
The magnitude 8 earthquakes that we're expecting to hit in Southern California, and in 1906, the San Francisco earthquake
here looked as if there was 10 or 20 people pushing them back and forth alone. The first thing that came to my mind, I'm not a surfer or anything, but I felt that as I was on a surfboard. It was difficult standing still, having trouble actually keeping my balance.
Tim McLaughlin has been told by utility workers out there that it'll be at least 2 days before power and other services are restored. And while we're talking about power, the one thing that I have not been able to dig out tonight, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it, is could any damage have been done to one of several nuclear reactor power plants, which of course dot the California coastline? I can't remember specifically how many of them there are, but the quake was powerful, and I assume that the officials out there are maintaining a very, very close watch on all of those nuclear power plants to see if they sustained any serious damage, which potentially could cause some nuclear or radioactive leakage. I'm sure they're checking on that. If we get any word, we'll pass it along to you. Diana?
Bill, one of the most infamous earthquakes in history happened in San Francisco in 1906. That was before there was a Richter scale, but its magnitude is estimated at 6.3. It killed more than 5...
We don't want this scene ever repeated. East Lansing residents and city...
To find out if anybody is trapped alive and who just is trapped. But that information is still coming in. It's very, very difficult to confirm. We take a break here. The question for a lot of baseball sports fans, when, if the World Series is going to resume. Don Shane with that part of tonight's San Francisco story, when the update continues on 7 in just a moment. Seismology, like most sciences, is a very arcane, mysterious one. The experts know a lot about it, and most of us who sit at home and listen to stories about earthquakes and the exploration of space have to have it explained to us, and we thought that that may be very beneficial for you people at home this evening. So we got one of the professors at the University of Michigan Department of Seismology out of bed tonight, I guess. He is Professor Henry Pollack at the University of Michigan. Professor, thank you so much for being with us. Could you tell the people at home the way the Richter scale works? It's not a numerical system, as I understand it. In other words, if a quake registered 6.8 and another one registers 6.9, the one that registers 6.9 is like 10 or 100 times more severe than the 6.8. Am I right on that, or?
Not quite, although you have the right idea. It's between whole numbers, but like between 6 and 7, 7 is 10 times larger than 6, 6 is 10 times larger than 5. But the decimal increments are smaller factors of difference.
Professor Pollack, somebody made the point earlier on ABC in talking to someone in your field that this one was big enough so that it had been measured in virtually every earthquake monitoring Richter scale equipped station around the world. Does that give us an idea of just how big this one was? And is this the big one that they refer to in California?
Well, I'll answer both of those questions. Any earthquake of magnitude 6 will generally be recorded around the world in seismological observatories. So the assessment that this one was recorded at every place is probably true. Whether this is the big one or not, I think it probably is not. When we speak of the big one, we're talking about a magnitude 8 earthquake, which would be 10 times larger than this one. The 1906 earthquake in San Francisco, which devastated the city, was about 8.25.
Professor Pollack, let me ask a question that maybe will put this in perspective for the people living in Detroit. If that 6.9 had hit Detroit tonight with an epicenter, let's say, of 40 to 50 miles away, what would it have done to the Fisher Building, the GM Building, the Ambassador Bridge, the Windsor Tunnel? Can you give us some kind of a ballpark evaluation of that so that those people at home can understand what we're talking about?
There's no question everyone in Detroit would feel it. Those tall buildings would certainly sway, the bridge would sway. I wouldn't want to predict damage because I'm unfamiliar with the construction standards of the tall buildings in Detroit. But at that size of an earthquake, that close to Detroit, would certainly do some damage.
Could it topple something that was built, let's say, in the late 20s?
Conceivably, if the building standards were not by modern earthquake technology, yes. I would expect there are some older buildings that might topple.
Is it over, or is there no way to predict? There are going to be tremblers, certainly, but will it take a while for the pressure to build up between the plates of the San Andreas Fault, or is this it for a while?
I wouldn't say it's it for a while. There certainly will be aftershocks, and the San Andreas Fault has earthquakes along it every day, and just in the last decade or so, we've seen magnitude 6 earthquakes at various places in California. I think that the past history shows us that we can expect more moderate and eventually large earthquakes in California again. I don't think it's the end of it.
Professor Pollack, thank you so much. You've been so much help to us, and you're very generous with your time and gave us a lot.
Game 3 and everything that might follow after, he is hopeful will be announced tomorrow. They obviously have to check out Candlestick Park for any structural damage. They're thinking maybe Oakland Coliseum, but they don't know what the situation of that stadium is. Let me show you what it looked like from field level when this quake hit. You're looking at Joe Morgan of ABC next to former Giant great Willie Mays getting ready to do an interview. And watch this. They just start looking around, and all of a sudden, these guys standing there get knocked right off the air. Meanwhile, up in the broadcast booth, Al Michaels, Tim McCarver, Jim Palmer looking onto the field after that happened. And all of a sudden, as they turn around, the exact same thing happened to them. They get knocked off the air. Inside Candlestick, Storm Davis holding his child and his wife. That's Terry Steinbach's wife crying. Jose Canseco and his wife on the field. Dennis Eckersley and his family leaving the field. The 60,000-plus fans filed out of Candlestick in a very calm, orderly fashion. And Baseball Commissioner Fay Vincent made a short statement concerning Game 3.
Well, we'll wait to see tomorrow. We hope to play the third game here, but we obviously have to check the stadium and be sure there's no damage that would put anybody at risk.
Now, managers Tony La Russa and Roger Craig, just like many of the other players, left the ballpark still dressed in their uniforms. But Craig did somehow maintain his sense of humor.
Is this the wildest in all your years, Roger?
Of course it is. It's what you call a home field advantage.
Roger Craig talking about that quake. So we don't know yet exactly when they will play Game 3 and any other games after that, or where they will play Game 3, but they're hopeful of knowing sometime tomorrow. Meanwhile, Bob Probert, deportation of cocaine. Probert still faces a deportation hearing and then will be subject to a league penalty. All that before the Wings even consider taking him back and letting him play again. Jacques Demers, GM Jimmy Devellano, owner Mike Ilitch all spoke on his behalf in court today. A number of his teammates were there. When Probert left the courtroom today, he was asked about members of the Wings showing up to support him.
People I let down that still care about me. And, you know, I'm going to try my best to, if I do get another chance, not to do that again.
Pistons play the side.
We're going to go now to Robert Hager in Washington, who is standing by with the Transportation Secretary, Samuel Skinner, who has been dispatched by President Bush to go to California. Bob?
Tom, Secretary Skinner has just come out here. You're just about to leave for the coast right now, right?
Well, we're going to be leaving in a few minutes. The President has directed that we go out and make an assessment. We're very concerned about making sure that everything possible is being done, not only by state and local officials, but federal officials, and the effort is coordinated. But until we get out on the scene, we've got a team waiting for us to do a review and then report back to him. We really can't give you a first-hand assessment. So we expect to be out there about 3 this morning. And as soon as the daylight, which should be about 6:30, we'll be up in the air doing our own assessment. Yes, I would guess.
What are the early preliminary reports?
You've preliminary reports you've heard on the news. There's no sense in me second-guessing what you've all reported out there. A lot of the news we've been getting is from sources such as the Coast Guard, and of course you've got cameras on the scene. So I don't think there's anything we can really tell you more right now until we get out there. Our main concern, on behalf of the President, the administration, and Congressmen that are here, and everybody else, is to make sure that the humane side of this issue, that human life, everything is being done, and that we are coordinating everything that can be done. We've got a major traffic facility out there, the bridge, that is very vital, and that's very important. But we want to make sure that the human lives are being taken care of, and that people, if they're homeless or they're in any need of anything, that our government can and will respond on a coordinated basis and quickly. That's my mission, and as soon as I find out what's going on, I'll be reporting back to Governor Sununu and the President, and that'll begin early tomorrow morning.
Now, you're going with several members of the California congressional delegation, is that right?
Well, we've got a couple extra seats on the airplane, so The first congressman that contacted me, I was able to put him on the plane. This is so Congressman Edwards and Mineta are going with me, and I'm sure other members of the delegation will be out, and the White House is trying to facilitate that as well.
Congressman Mineta, have you heard anything from home about damage reports?
Yes, I have. I've had an opportunity to talk to several people in the San Jose area, and there's an extensive damage in terms of glass, not really in terms of physical damage from, let's say, buildings collapsing, but that's very, very preliminary. When I got off the phone just about 5 minutes ago, they were still experiencing aftershocks, and so this is, again, what we'll be able to assess once we get there tomorrow morning.
And have you heard anything of these reports that have been on news wires and other places of 40 people dead on the interstate highway? Have you heard those?
Yes, sir. I did hear about the collapse of Highway 880 in Oakland, where there was a cave-in, and from what I understand, about 40 were killed just from that cave-in. There were some 60, I guess, deaths in the Northern California area, but again, that report was probably about 45 minutes ago.
60 deaths, you said you heard?
It is what I had heard for Northern California.
Congressman Edwards, what reports do you have from home?
Well, they're not really very good. There are a lot of people are frightened out there, and glass on the floor, aftershocks. I think the aftershocks are the worst thing that people have going against them, but I think that Norm and I coming out there and the Secretary and this team that's going out will give them some confidence that we're concerned, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the problems are taken care of.
Do you have anything further than we've heard on injuries or deaths?
No, we have nothing further.
Thank you very much. Congressman Don Edwards, and that was Congressman Norm Mineta, going out with Transportation Secretary Samuel Skinner tonight, flying overnight to the West Coast, so they should be there about 4 or 5 hours from now. Tom?
Thank you very much, Robert Hager, who was with the two congressmen who represent portions of that area, Congressman Edwards and Mineta. Of course, some of the other San Francisco and Berkeley Bay Area congressmen will be going, I'm sure, as well. To bring you up to date, an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.9, which is a very destructive earthquake, an epicenter in the in the Santa Cruz area, which is south of San Francisco. We're going to do you this map one more time just so you can get a fix on it now. That occurred tonight, and what happened is that it occurred down here, but it radiated out through the San Francisco Bay Area. The big damage seems to have been right here at the approach to the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge and across the bridge down in this area, perhaps as many as 50 people killed in this area, 40 people killed here, 7 or 8 in the San Francisco area. Those are the reports that we're getting so far. They remain scattered. They have been confirmed as best they can be by government officials, but in fact we are working hard to reaffirm what we are learning tonight, because it is coming in a very episodic fashion right now. Most of the power is off. We do have reporters from KRON in San Francisco, KCRA in Sacramento, and our own people who are at work there. Let's go back now and look at what KRON is able to transmit in the city of San Francisco itself on emergency backup power, show you what is going on. Most of the damage in the city, as we've been saying repeatedly, has been occurring near the wharf area. Emerald Yee is on your left and Evan White on your right. There are two principal reporters for the station, KRON.
And that was by far the most serious fire in the city.
It was indeed. So if BART can get operating, that's going to help ease some of the gridlock. I must admit, I would, if I wanted to get home to my family, I would run under the tube. But boy, I'd rather not. And I'll hold my breath the entire trip. Thank you.
I must tell you, as a Bay Area resident, though, that's, you know, when you think of...
Now, we get them only off and on. We want to tell you that the greatest single amount of damage tonight has been to the California interstate system in Northern California, on one side of the bay in Oakland, and on the other side of the bay near an approach going south to San Jose. We believe it's at the Cypress Bridge approach, which leads south out of the city of San Francisco. It occurred during the rush hour, and as many as 53 people may have been killed. We have some additional picture that we'd like to share with you now. This is the approach to the interstate that we believe where the greatest damage was done. That is the top section of an interstate collapsed onto the bottom section. An absolute pancake-like situation, as you can tell. And we think that not too far from there, this brick building collapsed onto some cars, and 5, maybe 6 people were killed when that happened. Those are the pictures that we have right now. It is coming up on 20 to 9 in California. This earthquake occurred at shortly after 5 out there. Now we can give you a better sense of what is going on. Almost nothing has been done to the Golden Gate Bridge up in the upper left-hand corner of your picture, but it is that Bay Bridge that has suffered damage both in the span going from the city across the San Francisco Bay to Oakland and just south of there, leading to San Jose and the San Francisco airport, which represents the pictures we just saw. San Francisco, of course, is laced by earthquake faults. 2 of them converge not too far from there, the Hayward Fault and the San Andreas Fault. It is a city that has been a target for an earthquake for a long, long time, and as Robert Bazell reminded us earlier this evening, there has been a government report just recently that San Francisco and the South Bay area would be the next likely target of California's big earthquake. In fact, it came tonight with no warning. 60,000 fans at Candlestick Park for the 3rd game of the World Series, the Giants trailing the A's 2-0, and the game was immediately canceled. The park was evacuated on the orders of the Commissioner of Baseball, Fay Vincent. There were some cracks in the upper tiers of the park, but people were able to get out of there without any injuries, and certainly no deaths so far as we know. More pictures now from San Francisco. This is what we were looking at just a few moments ago. This is an area down near the approaches to the Bay Bridge.
And we saw cars and with people inside crushed beneath a lot of bricks and rubble. But
KRON is on the air, our San Francisco affiliate there. Let's hear what they have to say and what's the latest from them.
2 in Santa Cruz. Those are the confirmed deaths. Hundreds are injured. Most of the injured are at the freeway collapse in Oakland.
And that would be it. We're going to show you some pictures now from the Bay Bridge. This is where the upper deck collapsed onto the lower deck, and portions of that lower deck then fell into the bay. We're still waiting to get word as to whether people went down with the lower deck or fell off from the lower deck, but you can see how the bridge basically opened up when the earthquake hit. The top level is eastbound from San Francisco to Oakland. The lower deck in the other direction from Oakland coming. These would be people coming into the city when that top deck collapsed on them. We had several eyewitness reports from people that worked here that happened to be on the bridge. One of them described a tremendous shaking. She was on a bus. They thought everything was okay, and then they proceeded. And she said not more than 10, 15 seconds later, everything came to a stop. People got out of their cars and were running off the bridge. And as she was getting off, she heard crashing sounds behind her as parts of the bridge collapsed. Of course, the worst fatalities are not on the bridge, but just off the bridge, the Cypress section. This is the cantilevered section, the double-deck freeway getting off the Bay Bridge into the East Bay. And we're told that when that collapsed, that as many as 53 people were killed and 400 injured. Rescue efforts are going to be going on all night to try to get people out of that, out of the debris that they're trapped between. We got word earlier from San Francisco Mayor Art Agnos that damage in the city was minimal. Depends on how you define minimal. We saw some pretty serious damage. Also, the Chief of State Sununu is on his way from the White House to assess the damage out here. But as far as transportation, and this is one thing we're going to keep repeating over and over again because people are going to need to know how to get from one point to another if they do have to. For the most part, people are being asked to stay put, that would be the easiest for everyone all around to stay put, stay home. But most bridges have been reopened. The one that remains closed is San Mateo, and that we don't know when it will open, but we were told that about 5:30 would be closed for 2 to 3 hours. Bay Bridge, of course, that will be closed for a long time. But as far as other modes of transportation, the other bridges are open. And in fact, we had sent reporters to several parts of the airport, to Candlestick, to downtown, and they've been able to get back.
All right, that's Emerald Yee, who is an anchorwoman at KRON in San Francisco, Channel 4, doing the best that they can to bring you up to date on the situation out there. She mentioned John Sununu. We don't think that the White House Chief of Staff will be going to San Francisco. We just heard from Transportation Secretary Samuel Skinner. He'll be going out there tonight on an overnight flight with several members of the California congressional delegation representing the Northern Bay area. As we know it at this hour, the death toll in the Greater Bay Area may be as high as 100 people. It could go higher, of course, as they sort out the dimensions of this tragedy, reaching all the way from Santa Cruz and Monterey and Carmel north to Oakland and to Berkeley, California. Although the damage in the Berkeley area seems to have been relatively confined, we are told that there was the collapse of a freeway in the Oakland area. Interstate 880 went down, and that maybe as many as 40 people were killed there and another 53 people killed on the other side of the Oakland Bay Bridge at the Cypress on-ramp. So that's what we know at this hour. We want to go now to Dr. Fred Primgold, who is with Virginia Tech. He's an expert on architecture and on earthquakes, and he has been watching all of this so far. Is there anything that you can do to make interstates and bridges earthquake-proof, Doctor?
Well, of course. I think what we've seen here is two rather old structures which have fallen victim to this event. They also happen to be structures which pass over the
pile up on some major crossroads in the city of San Jose. Keep in mind that San Jose, Santa Cruz, San Francisco, Oakland, and the smaller community of Hollister, California, that is the rough circle in which the major part of the earthquake, insofar as we know, hit. There's an awful lot still unknown about this. Fires broke out in Palo Alto near Stanford University. However, we're told that damage at Stanford University itself is, at first look at least, very slight. The San Francisco airport, one of the busiest airports in the United States, has been closed. There was some damage there. Officials ordered all bridges in a 150-mile area closed. The Golden Gate Bridge was open earlier. So far as could be determined, it was the only bridge in the area, immediate area of San Francisco and Oakland that hadn't suffered at least some damage. Helicopter pilots confirmed that the upper span of the San Francisco Bay Bridge had collapsed on traffic traveling on the lower span. You couldn't see that from some earlier reports, but the helicopter pilots have confirmed that. Now, Jim Maltos of the California Highway Patrol is on the telephone now. Mr. Maltos, thank you for being with us. What's the latest particularly about the tragedy on Highway 880?
Well, it looks we're still standing now at 40-plus confirmed deaths. We can't get into
I'm sorry we lost the phone there, but just what we did get from Sergeant Matos of the California Highway Patrol was at least 40 people killed in that one area of Highway 880 in Oakland. And as you may recall from earlier in the evening, the Lieutenant Governor of California, Bill McCarthy, had said that he thought it would be more than 40 people when all was said and done in that section of Highway 880. Governor Duke Majan of California was out of the country when this earthquake occurred. He was, the last report, headed back in. Now, we believe that Jim Matos of the California Highway Patrol is back on the phone now. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm back.
You were saying that you knew of 40 confirmed dead in this collapse of this section of Highway 880, and you were about to say something else, and that's where we lost you.
Well, we have one possible fatality on the Bay Bridge. Apparently, a lady tried to jump across a 50-foot gap and didn't make it. So, in critical condition. We also have now some of the damage in the toll plaza to the Bay Bridge. Water and mud are beginning to come up through the cracks, so it looks like that road's going to be seriously damaged for some time.
Thank you very much, Jim Matos. In Union City, which is about 55 miles southeast of San Francisco, some damage is reported. However, there's been no confirmation of any fatalities or widespread injury or damage in that area. One grocery store on Barbara Lake is reported as saying it's a total disaster in terms of everybody being shaken and a lot of businesses shaken up. But I repeat, no reports of considerable damage or loss of life or injuries in the Union City area. The most dramatic event, perhaps of this night, that was captured on videotape or film has been the collapse of the San Francisco Bay Bridge, a section of it. And Harold Dow has our report about that.
At the beginning of rush hour, there was no warning. An amateur photographer took these pictures as a 30-foot section of the San Francisco Bay Bridge gave way, falling onto the lower deck. One motorist drove right into the hole. Another one followed. The amateur photographer's husband gave this eyewitness account to CBS affiliate KPIX-TV.
The fellow that tried to jump it didn't look like he'd ever hit his brakes. He just, was driving Oakland and going 50 or 60 miles an hour, and recognized it too late and jumped across. And when he hit, the car sank into the hole. You could see it tried to run up, and the front axle was bashed up underneath, and the people were in there for quite a long time.
An eyewitness who was riding on a bus was the first to get to the fallen car.
I jumped off the bus, ran over and pulled these people out of their cars. There was no injuries. Pretty scary. I only came out with a cut lip.
A Coast Guard rescue helicopter was summoned to the scene. 4 people were rescued, but one passenger in another car on the lower deck was apparently crushed to death. Harold Dow, CBS News, New York.
The Associated Press has rewritten its lead, and it now calls this a catastrophic earthquake, quote, unquote. Earlier it had been called certainly a major earthquake, a severe earthquake, and a violent earthquake. By calling it a catastrophic earthquake, you say, well, isn't that a bit strong? The answer is probably on the basis of current information, no. 7.0 on the Richter scale at the epicenter, which is about 8 miles north of Santa Cruz. At least 53 people confirmed dead. Our station KPIX in San Francisco says it has confirmed at least 58 dead. A section of the San Francisco Bay Bridge was caved in. There has been widespread damage, and reports from vast areas where we know that damage took place simply are not available. We remind again, there's been a request, if you don't have to use the telephone, if you're in Northern California, then don't. And anybody on the outside, please, emergency officials say, don't try to call in. The phones are needed there. People in the earthquake area are encouraged to stay inside their houses. We have a report from the Castro section of the San Francisco Bay region, and reports there that people were beginning to line up at some food stores because they wanted to get candles and other such things. Residents are advised not to do that by the emergency and disaster control officials. This is the San Francisco Bay Bridge, where at least one person has been confirmed as killed. An investigation is proceeding about what happened to people who were below this section. Keep in mind that these cars were on this section of the bridge that collapsed. There's a section below that, I believe, and there's an investigation going on as to what happened below there. Greg Cook, a spokesman for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Walnut Creek, 25 miles east of Oakland, said, I will tell you as a native Californian that this was the wildest, longest earthquake I have ever written. The California Highway Patrol has again confirmed that at least 6 people were killed in the collapse of part of the Garden City Mall in Santa Cruz. Now, that total is included in our CBS confirmed at least 53 dead. But the Highway Patrol again says that it has confirmed at least 6 people killed in the City Garden Mall in Santa Cruz. This is videotape from earlier in San Francisco. These were injuries early on. You can get some sense of what the scene is on the ground near one of those roadways that collapsed there. Chris Scholes of Columbia University, professor of geology and expert on earthquakes, the picture slowly begins to form here. That while there has unquestionably been widespread damage, it's a major earthquake by any standard with 53 confirmed dead, possibly as many as 58 already confirmed dead, and the death toll, one would have to figure, would have to go at least somewhat higher than that. Major earthquake by any standard. However, as this picture forms, and we ask ourselves the question, in the San Andreas Fault, the main force of the earthquake went north or south. The indications at this moment are what?
The indications are that it went south, and that it was, and the actual rupture of the fault was in a relatively unpopulated area of the Santa Cruz Mountain. Now, that's very important because
both internal and external all over the city, and we're trying to take care of those. We have
fairly organized team of citizen volunteers in every neighborhood that we've organized over the last 3 years for just this purpose. So they're going around to their neighbors, turning off gas whenever possible. We're putting all of our personnel into the streets to warn people about gas leaks. That seems to be the biggest risk we have right now. We had an explosion, not a major one, but in one of the apartment complexes almost 2.5 hours after the earthquake because of gas leak.
Where were you when the earthquake hit, Mr. Mayor?
I was in my mayor's office here and headed for the door. I've lived on the West Coast my entire life, and this was by far the worst shake that I've ever felt. As I was heading for the door, I had to grab onto my table to keep from being knocked off my feet.
We're told it went on officially for 15 seconds. Did it seem much longer than that to you?
Well, it always seems longer than that. My guess is at least 15 seconds with a couple of aftershocks after that time.
All right, thank you very much. That is Mayor Larry Stone, and we've just gotten an update on something. We've had a couple of viewers call to say that Highway 880 and Highway 17 are the same roadway, and that means that we may have been merging some casualty figures. It may mean that there were 53 people killed altogether and not 100, as we had indicated earlier. So it may mean that the worst of the damage has been now confined to the Highway 880 area, which is going south on the Cypress Bridge on-ramp to San Jose on that side of the bridge. As we say, all of this is quite uncertain at this time. Bob Jamieson is standing by in San Francisco. Do you have anything more for us, Bob, on these casualty figures?
Yes, Tom. I think that what we have, I think we can help clear a little bit of this up. What we have been told is that at the moment, the casualties total 60 from the earthquake, and it would break down this way. 53 from the Cypress Bridge, which is 880, and Route 17, which is an approach to the Bay Bridge. 5 people who were killed in the collapse of that building in the Jefferson Divisadero area. 2 killed in Santa Cruz, and I think that adds up to 60. There is also talk, Tom, that several hundred were injured.
What are their names?
Several hundred. I've heard one figure of 400, but that's something we cannot confirm. In addition to that, Tom, the Jefferson Divisadero area, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, has been evacuated or is in the process of being evacuated so that there can be safety checks conducted in that area near Fisherman's Wharf.
All right, and how are they doing on that fire? We're looking at pictures of it right now. This is videotape from earlier, but I gather they're having a hard time bringing it under control.
We are told that it is now contained.
Okay. That's good news. Bob Jamieson, okay, bringing us up to date on that. The highway, it's 880 and Highway 17. That's the approach to the Oakland Bay Bridge. Those are that's the confined area. Bob is now saying at about 60 people, probably the death toll at this hour. J.J. Hudson and Larry Spiro are 2 ham radio operators at WRC in Washington. They've been talking to some fellow ham operators in the Northern California area. J.J. and Larry, what are they telling you about what's going on out there?
Well, Tom, what they're basically saying is that it's hard to get messages in and out of San Francisco right now. We've been copying a lot of traffic, trying to get into San Francisco and trying to get out. The phone lines, of course, are dead to long-distance traffic. And, Larry, we've even heard, a gentleman on the boat in the West Indies trying to get information about his mother in San Francisco.
Correct. We've heard amateur radio operators all over the world, from the West Indies to Hawaii, trying to call into San Francisco to check on the health and welfare of people in the city.
And one interesting note, there was also one hospital that they were trying to evacuate people from. There was some concern about the structural integrity.
That's correct. We understand that there's a hospital in Watsonville, California, and one in the San Francisco area itself that has been evacuated because they are fearful that the building may collapse. So they have evacuated a couple of hospitals in the area.
Yeah, but for the time being, it seems, Tom, that much of the attempts to get information into San Francisco are not working right now. As a matter of fact, they don't want people trying to make calls in there because it's overloading the system back there. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, I.J. Hudson and Larry Spiro. We're going to go back now and join the continuing coverage tonight of KRON, which is our affiliate in...
Begin to assess the damage. We're in communications with the Sacramento, California Emergency Management Community, which is in direct contact with their proper authorities. We're also in direct communications with our people on the Presidio, that's FEMA people, in conjunction with the 6th Army down there, who has their emergency center up. We do wait for the trigger of the request from the state to respond to their needs. We are not the first responders.
This is the scene in San Francisco tonight. We want to repeat to you, however, that we believe that this kind of damage is largely confined to just one neighborhood there. We have been saying repeatedly it is the neighborhood that is on the north side of the city, just north of the so-called North Beach area, the Broadway area, which was celebrated in the past for its peep shows and so on, and then north of there is Fisherman's Wharf. Somewhere between North Beach and Fisherman's Wharf, we believe, is where that neighborhood is. And Bob Jameson standing by. The city now coming under control. Any indication of power or lights or anything yet, Bob?
There are reports of power in Burlingame, Tom, in Berkeley, and a couple of other places. I can assure you that we certainly don't have any here in downtown San Francisco. There is no evidence that it's going to come on anytime soon. As I mentioned earlier, there had been damage.
Okay, and what about on the streets of San Francisco? Lots of sirens and a lot of vehicular traffic, a lot of people out wandering around? Can you
Yes, all three, a lot of sirens. Streets are experiencing traffic which I guess would be heavier than normal for this time of night. The traffic is moving pretty smoothly despite the fact that there are no stoplights. There are volunteers and police directing traffic at the intersections. There are some emergency lights on in buildings in downtown San Francisco, but very few.
Well, Bob, you know, you're familiar with the city of San Francisco with the Bay Bridge out and all that damage, and that city is going to come to a grinding halt for the next couple of days.
Well, I think it already has in the sense that that on our ride back from Candlestick Park, it was very, very difficult because sections of freeway were closed. There are, I understand, ways to get to Oakland other than the Bay Bridge. But that, of course, I would expect that you will not see any sort of a normal day tomorrow. There is already speculation that because of damage to interstate highways, to bridges, to overpasses, there is already speculation that there will be serious conversations about delaying the World Series beyond tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much, Bob Jameson. We're going to go now to a man by the name of George Hudson, who's with the National Red Cross. He's in Washington, D.C., describing what his agency is prepared to do.
This is what we call our operations room, and we're trying to make as much contact as we can with our local Red Cross chapters in the San Francisco and up and down the coast, especially our larger chapters that have the resources to send people in to help for those chapters that have been affected. We already have people on the way, and as you know, we have about 1,200 people in the Caribbean and in the Carolinas now, so we'll be scrambling to identify other people or train people to send into this particular job.
And how many people do you have on the way, and how many people would you be able to mobilize within a day?
Well, I think we can probably mobilize anywhere to 150, 200 people during the day tomorrow, if that's what is necessary when we find out what's happening. And the chapter in Los Angeles and some of the ones unaffected have people on the way right now. I can't say how many there are, but we'll have vehicles and emergency equipment and people to be prepared to do whatever is necessary in that area.
And these people are driving up the coast now?
Yes, they're making every effort to get there. Some will be flying, and luckily, although it's 10 o'clock here, it's only 7 out there, so that they're still able to contact people and get them started.
We have a situation where you're sitting in beds and tents or any kind of food or anything?
Yes, we know that from the Los Angeles area, they're setting up cots and the type of things we need to open shelters and have temporary housing if that's necessary. Yeah.
Tell me about the medical situation, reinforcement.
We'll have some nurses that'll be on the way. The Red Cross trained nurses are always ready to go there. We have some reports that a couple of the hospitals are receiving lots of
section, and at that point, literally thousands of people left their cars and were all running back to Yerba Buena Island. We congregated there for a while, and then we were asked to return to our cars. It took a couple of hours on the bridge with all of our radios going and people trying to stay calm, and they turned all of those cars and buses around, betwixt and between, kind of too far away to really feel we could get anywhere safe.
So we're glad you made it back.
So am I.
And were able to tell us about this. Mary Borelli, thanks a lot.
Going back to the command center in San Francisco for Roland Post, and apparently another update on the situation of getting power restored with a PG&E spokesman.
Well, I have it, John Ulrich, who's the director of the PG&E for the here in San Francisco. Major jobs for them tonight.
250 people killed.
The governor's office, the spokesman in Sacramento at the governor's office, says 268 people are dead, and the California Office of Emergency Services has it at about 216. So the best we can say is to give you the information that we have. Roughly 250 people are believed to have lost their lives in this major earthquake that registered 6.9, almost 7 on the Richter scale. It was centered in Santa Cruz, California. The major damage is in the San Francisco-Oakland area, especially in Oakland, along a stretch of about a mile of Interstate 880, where the upper deck of that roadway collapsed onto the lower deck. A number of people are still trapped in their cars, and we can't even estimate the number of fatalities or injuries there. One hospital spokesman, I think it was Highland Hospital, said, "We're not very busy now because most of the victims brought in from that section of roadway all are dead." There was also a major problem on the huge Oakland Bay Bridge, a major thoroughfare there connecting Oakland and San Francisco. There, a section of the upper bridge has collapsed onto the lower section of the bridge. The damage estimates range upwards from $1 billion. Again, the epicenter was in Santa Cruz, which is about 75 miles south of San Francisco. Let's go now to Kelly Brothers. Kelly is the assignment editor for our NBC affiliate in Sacramento, KCRA. Kelly, good morning. What can you tell us?
Good morning, John. We're here in Sacramento, and it's been Sacramentans have always been kind of cloaked in a little bit of safety because we always felt safer from earthquakes being this far away from the fault lines. But I tell you, this one rolled through here today.
What did it feel like, and where were you when it hit?
I actually was home loading up a car, and it was strange to give you some idea of how this quake rolled through the valley from the bay all the way up through here and into the Sierra Nevada. I was out loading a car when a neighborhood friend came running out of his house who had been watching San Francisco television, and he came running out and said there's just been a huge earthquake in San Francisco. They were knocked off the air. He had been watching it on his satellite dish. As we kind of laughed at him for a minute, and about 10 or 15 seconds later, the tremor just rolled through, nearly knocking some of us off our feet. It was really, as I said, we've had a few quakes before, but nothing like this. Then in a matter of moments, trees were swaying, chandeliers swaying, and even water jumping out of swimming pools throughout the whole Sacramento area.
Kelly, have there been any reports of major damage in the Sacramento area?
None yet. We've had a state building had some cracks in the plaster and, a lot of debris throughout some of the stairwells. There have been a few reports of, things falling off shelves and that sort of thing, but certainly not on the magnitude as that of what we've seen in the Bay Area.
Thank you, Kelly Brothers of station KCRA-TV, our NBC affiliate in Sacramento, California. Again, about 1 million people, Northern Californians, are without electrical power this morning. They hope to restore that later today. About 500,000 people are without gas. Now, at this hour, people along the East Coast, the eastern section of the United States, are waking up, getting ready to go to work, perhaps first learning about this. A few minutes ago, we heard on our KRON coverage in San Francisco, an official with the phone company was saying, please don't call and jam up their phone lines. But obviously, if you have relatives and loved ones who live in San Francisco, you want to find out that they're all right or what the situation is. We do know, as far as injuries and fatalities, that 9 people are reported dead. To kind of put this in perspective, 9 people reported dead in San Francisco. The major area, again, of fatalities is that 1 mile stretch or so of Interstate 880, where it collapsed, and during the rush hour at about 4 minutes after 5 o'clock San Francisco time, and that's where the great amount of the fatalities are. Let's go back now to San Francisco and join the coverage of our affiliate there, KRON.
Out of somebody's house, and apparently they don't belong there, so we'll have to check out further what the circumstances actually are.
There's student pieces here in California waste, toxic waste pollution down in Silicon Valley.
On water pollution?
No, waste pollution.
Waste pollution. Where do they go to school?
They go to school in Norway, and they're having their thesis down here.
Are they working with the university here, or?
They're working with some companies down in Silicon Valley.
Do you have any reason to believe that they would be in somebody's house they didn't know?
Oh, definitely not. They were probably...
Pardon my throat, as it dries out, it gets worse. One point we do want to make here is what brought all this about is that one of the neighbors fired a gun, apparently into the ground, not at either of the 2 men, and that's what brought them to a halt and brought in the police. So anyone, if you're out in the area and looking around, and we've seen lots of people out wandering the streets tonight trying to get a look at what's happened, because the devastation is just hard to believe until you see it with your own eyes. It is just absolutely devastating. But be careful, because people are concerned, people are nervous, and so are the police, and they will respond quickly.
And in fact, officials are saying not to wander around and do some sightseeing. They're saying stay put.
Stay home.
Yeah.
That's the best idea. Best advice.
And earlier, the police chief said there was minor looting in other areas. This would be the Western Addition, the Tenderloin, and Hayes Valley, but pretty much everything is under control, it seems, at this point. We're now going to go to Wilson Van Alsen. He's out in the marina, and let's see what the latest is out there. Wilson?
Well, Emerald, I had a chance a couple of minutes ago just to wander around the marina in the areas that were not particularly hard hit. And I've got to tell you, it was an eerie feeling wandering up and down these streets. There is nobody in the various houses and apartments around here. All the streets are being cordoned off by security officers who will not let people in. They are worried about the looting situation. They are also worried about what of these buildings are still habitable and which ones are not. Clearly, the building at Jefferson and Divisadero that Gary showed you earlier, the one right back here, is one that people probably will never go back into. That building will have to be razed. There are other buildings that when you go inside, you find loose plaster hanging and walls akimbo, walls simply not vertical at all and give you the feeling they could collapse at any moment. But right now, people are being kept out of the marina area. Sometimes people are being allowed in if they can show a driver's license and say that they have good reason to be there, but that good reason doesn't include going into their apartments to gather valuable effects. So a lot of people are being temporarily inconvenienced in a very bad way. On the other hand, we have tragedy also to report here in the marina. We told you earlier about the fire at Beach in Divisadero. Our best understanding about that fire, and this is subject to confirmation when the firefighters go in after dawn tomorrow, or pardon me, after dawn today, is that 2 and possibly 3 people perished in that fire. And then across the street from that, there was the building that collapsed, a 3-story building that went all the way down to the point where it looks like a 1-story building.
This is a report from a correspondent for our NBC affiliate in San Francisco, KRON. As you saw, he was reporting live there from the scene of that major fire that's been burning all night, caused, of course, by the shock from the earthquake that occurred in San Francisco a little bit after 5 o'clock Pacific Coast time, just before the World Series game number 3 was to get underway. Here's what we know at this hour. About 250 people are believed to have died in the earthquake. It measured 6.9 on the Richter scale. It was centered near Santa Cruz, California, which is 75 miles south of San Francisco. Injury estimates are 400 to 500 people. About $1 billion in damage, at least. That figure certainly expected to go higher. There have been reports of a lot of damage to buildings throughout the San Francisco and the Oakland area, but the major areas of concern, a stretch of Highway 880, the interstate in Oakland, where a number of people were trapped in their cars when part of the bridge collapsed. Our coverage on NBC News will continue momentarily. Earthquake hit. Cars falling off the bridge, others crushed. Throughout the Bay Area, officials say at least 250 people are confirmed dead and hundreds more injured this morning. The powerful earthquake, measuring 6.9 on the Richter scale, hit the San Francisco Bay Area last evening. In addition to the bridge collapse, buildings were toppled and fires burned through the night. Good morning. While rescue operations continue in the Bay Area, emergency management officials in Washington are getting ready to send in aid. We'll have live reports this morning from San Francisco and from Washington on this special edition of NBC News at Sunrise. I'm John Palmer. This is Wednesday, October the 18th. 150 people are dead and more than 500 injured following that powerful earthquake that rocked the San Francisco area last night. The quake, which measured 6.9 on the Richter scale, is the second largest ever recorded in the United States.